Right in the
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the DeKalb City Council regular meeting of October 10th to order. A roll call, please.
Morris.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Smith. Perkins.
Here.
McAdams.
Here.
Burbick.
Here.
Favor.
Here.
Mayor Barnes.
Here.
Seven president.
All right, moving on to agenda item B, Pledge of Allegiance. Could we have Mr. Hy-Vee, Shadow Gentry, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you, Shadow. All right, number C, approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second?
Moved by Alderman Verbeek, seconded by Alderman McAdams. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Morris.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbick.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
7-0.
All right, the agenda is approved. Moving on to agenda item D, presentations. I have a proclamation to read. It's a proclamation for White Cane Awareness Day. So whereas the white cane, which every blind citizen of our city has a right to carry, demonstrates and symbolizes the ability to achieve a full and independent life and the capacity to work productively in competitive employment. And whereas the white cane, by allowing every blind person to move freely and safely from place to place, makes it possible for the blind to fully participate in and contribute to our society and to live the lives they want. And whereas every citizen should be aware that the law requires that motorists and cyclists exercise appropriate caution when approaching a blind person carrying a white cane. And whereas Illinois law also calls upon employers, both public and private, to be aware of and utilize the employment skills of our blind citizens by recognizing their worth as individuals and their productive capacities. And whereas the City of DeKalb, through its public agencies and with the cooperative assistance of the National Federation of the Blind of Illinois, NFBI, can and should facilitate the expansion of employment opportunities for and greater acceptance of blind persons in the competitive labor market. Now therefore, I, Cohen Barnes, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, Illinois, do hereby proclaim October 15, 2022 as White Cane Awareness Day in DeKalb and call upon our schools, colleges, and universities to offer full opportunities for training to blind persons and urge employers and the public to utilize the available skills of competent blind persons and to open new opportunities for the blind in our rapidly changing society, and upon all citizens to recognize the white cane as a tool of independence for blind pedestrians on our streets and highways. I became aware of this because she's in the audience right now, but Rachel Newland was walking downtown during the construction, and obviously it was a little difficult to navigate during the construction, but it was great. We ran into each other, had an opportunity to talk for a little bit, brought a lot of awareness to me on obviously the challenges during the construction, but also I don't know what you would call them. When you hit the button in order to cross the street, we have now audible alerts, but they're also those 4-foot or maybe 3.5-foot tall columns that actually trigger that. So it just makes it a lot more accessible for those that are visually impaired. So Rachel, it was great to meet you. Really appreciate you bringing this to my attention, and hopefully this brings just a little bit more awareness to the issue itself. So how about a round of applause for October 15th? And Rachel, thanks for coming out tonight. Zach Gill, our city engineer, will help escort you out. Because like I said, no need to stick around for the rest of the meeting. But thank you for coming out.
I appreciate your support.
You betcha.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to public participation. E, we have Alex Nerad. Alex, with the Egyptian Theater. As always, I have to say it, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Well, good evening. My name is Alex Nerad, Executive Director of the Egyptian Theater. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Egyptian Theater and Stagecoach Players regarding a funding request we have made to the City of DeKalb for ARP COVID recovery funds. We are the only two nonprofit arts organizations in the City of DeKalb that own and operate buildings. As you are all aware, March 2020 was the start of the COVID-19 global pandemic that no one in the world was fully prepared for. Our industry just like others at the time, was shut down completely. As time went on, most other industries could reopen with curbside pickup, home delivery, shipping, and other new methods, while our industry remained completely shuttered or severely restricted for over a year and a half. During the period we were closed, the Egyptian Theater and Stagecoach Players combined had over 275 canceled or rescheduled performances, over 66,000 in projected attendance loss, and over 1.75 million in lost revenue. Then there is the immense cultural and community impact that is hard to represent with numbers, and there is the economic impact to the community that benefited from the roughly $3 million in direct economic impact each year prior to the pandemic from our two organizations. In March 2021, the American Rescue Plan Act was enacted and provided federal COVID recovery aid to state and local governments. The City of DeKalb received over $10 million from this federal funding, which included the following guidance. Quote, Treasury encourages recipients to provide assistance to those household, businesses, and nonprofits in communities most disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. In June 2021, we sent an email to the city with our funding request. Over the last year, we have had ongoing conversations with the city regarding this request. On August 18th of this year, the Board of Directors for the Egyptian Theater and Stagecoach Players jointly submitted a formal funding request to the entire City Council that included the impact both organizations endured during the pandemic, the clear justification for this funding request, summaries of the immense positive impact both organizations have on the community, and many letters of support from businesses, hotels, and restaurants. Our collective funding request is for less than 1% of the total ARP funding the City of DeKalb received from the federal government. Our request, as provided to City Council, is for $75,000 for the Egyptian Theater and $25,000 for Stagecoach Players for unrestricted operating support. It was the government that shut us down and restricted our ability to generate revenue. The government provided this funding to support those disproportionately impacted. So we are here asking our government for less than 1% of the funding they received exactly for this purpose. We respectfully request that the City Council add this funding request to the next agenda for discussion and consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. It's my understanding, Alderwoman Larson, you want us to add it to the next agenda, which is no problem for the discussion.
Yes, I would. Both
Okay.
Carolyn and I were moved by this and felt that it needed to be presented to the whole council.
Awesome. We'll add it to the next agenda, and I look forward to the discussion. All right. Moving on to appointments. Agenda item F, we have none. Moving on to agenda item G, approval of the minutes. Minutes submitted by the city clerk, we have none. Number 2, minutes submitted by the recording secretary, which are the minutes of the regular city council meeting as of September 26, 2022. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Moved by Alderman Favors, seconded by Alderwoman Morris. Comments or questions? Hearing none. Oh, yeah, sorry. You guys can definitely, you don't need to stick around. And congrats on your retirement, Sue. Hearing no questions or comments, roll call, please.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
The minutes have been approved. Moving on to number 8, or letter H, consent agenda. Number 1, accounts payable and payroll through October 10th, 2022 in the amount of $2,995,966.67. Number 2, investment and bank balance summary through August 2022. And number 3, year-to-date revenues and expenditures through August 2022. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Perkins, seconded by Alderwoman Larson. Questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
The consent agenda has been approved. Moving on to agenda item I, public hearings, we have none. Agenda item J, considerations. Number 1, consideration of electronic product promotion kiosks and their legality in the city of DeKalb. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderman McAdams, seconded by Alderman Favor. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The council is aware that we have licensed in the past video gaming outlets, and currently we have an allowance for up to 10. We have discussed, without formality, but a matter of interest, the possibility of cutting back on those as one or another of them go out of business. And it's in that context that I want to thank our executive assistant for taking note of the fact that we have something a little different operating in our town. It looks, in my opinion, a lot like a gaming type of operation. But it's got a different name, and more generally, these things are called promotion kiosks. There's a picture in your background. It looks almost like a video gaming. You sit in front of it, you put in your credit card or debit card, but you don't bet on a whack-a-mole type, well, I'm aging myself, type game where you immediately win or lose, but you're basically looking to get certificates which allow you to visit websites and shop if you're, for fun, is basically how it's built. But sometimes you don't get what you like, and then you come back and try again. So the state of Illinois, correct me if I'm wrong, has had sort of hands-off on this, but at the local level, I think we have to take this seriously, because it's not unlikely that this could, just because people walk in and say, that looks good, I'd like to put those in my establishment, and must be allowed because it's here. Well, right now, it's not allowed or disallowed. So we wanted to bring it to your attention, and this is a consideration. It's not an action item, but we are looking for some direction. At the staff level, we feel that this is close enough that if you're looking to limit the number of gaming type of operations, then this would fall within that category.
Alderwoman Larson.
Well, I'm showing my age, because when it came up on the thing, I'm like, what are these things? How do you work? I mean, what are these coupons you get? And I'll say right off the bat, on their website, they say it is not an amusement device. So to me, if it's not an amusement device, then it's kind of falls into the gaming device. And so my thought is, according to the way it's written now, our regulations, it's for amusement. And they say they're not an amusement, so my thought is no.
Alderman Faber.
You've already talked about the state. That was one of the questions I was going to ask, is has the state weighed in that?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, about 5 years ago, the Illinois Gaming Commission issued a regulation that indicated that these types of promotion kiosks, which are sweepstakes, it's like Publisher Clearinghouse meets the video gaming or 21st century, issued guidance that it was gambling and subject to the video gaming law. Guidance was challenged. They subsequently revoked the guidance and have decided to take a non-enforcement attitude with respect to it. So our definition of gaming, or gambling, I should say, under our liquor code is broader than the state statute. So this could fall under it. It would be nice if we wanted to prohibit it, to make that clearer. If we don't want to prohibit it, then the alternative would be to license it as an amusement.
Alderman McAdams.
So the Fifth Ward has consistently been vehemently opposed to gambling and gambling devices and amusement and the entire industry of gas station gambling devices. And so I think on behalf of my ward, I personally like to gamble. I think life is a gamble, but the ward itself does not like it. So if my ward has anything to say about it, prohibition would be fine.
Alderman Perkins.
So while the state hasn't weighed in, have any other communities weighed in? Is there any benchmarking here, or are we setting some degree of precedent?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any communities expressly prohibiting it. I am aware of some communities taking enforcement actions under their own existing regulations against it, but then several have allowed it. The city of Chicago, for example, has tried to enforce the proliferation of these, but it's been haphazard because they've proliferated at a large level. Here we haven't quite seen that yet, but they've.
And I guess as a follow-up, if the I'm guessing, the state walked away from it because they believed they were gonna have some difficulty enforcing it. What do you feel our likelihood of enforcing something, if we so choose to enforce something, is?
Well, it's like any problem with enforcement, you have to do it, right? I think that this is easier to enforce than some other things because it's a stationary object that has to be in the establishment. That's the point, was to draw people into the establishment and use it. So we should be able to easily identify that it's there. Right.
On that point,
Yeah.
not everyone who has thought about introducing what we consider to be legal video gaming devices is aware of the local code or the law, and we have had a few occasions in the last 3 years where people, machines have shown up, and then we have enforced that, and they've had to take them out. So this is the time, if you want to enforce it, and that's why this is up before you tonight, then take action. You get a dozen or so of these, then it's a lot harder, and I think we'll end up in court, and then might not prevail, if that's what you want.
All in favor?
So I have a couple more questions. One is IML. Is the IML weighed in at all on, you know, would be aware of any
I'm not aware of any other advocacy. There's no IML like model ordinance about it, if
No.
that's your question. And there's, I'm not aware what they may have suggested to the gaming board.
So based on what the city attorney had advised me before the meeting and before I wrote this and here tonight, because we're a home rule community, we have the authority both to allow it, if you so choose, and to enforce it, one way or another. And I think you operate on those assumptions. So if you like it, what we need to do is make some changes in code, chapter 36, possibly in the liquor code, I'm not sure. If you don't like it, same thing, but we'll have to identify things that are not permitted.
You had another question? All
I
in favor?
do, but I-
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
You can finish. Go ahead.
Okay, so the next thought is, as you had mentioned, this is a sweepstakes, and I think that'd be a lottery. So are the winnings then taxed as income, or is there a sale? Because, so, this is the only positive thing, but it's negative. For video gambling, is that, you know, we receive some tax money to the community. It's a pittance compared to what leaves our community, and which is the reason I am against video gambling completely. It takes money out of our community. I'm concerned this will do the same thing. And so I'm curious, what are the tax implications? How does somebody, if I've won and I'm going to a website and redeeming coupons, does that now become income? Or it's just a thought, I don't know if we've,
It's not something we would track or enforce.
yeah.
And it'd be pretty hard to enforce this, because you don't know, sometimes there's a delay, you don't know. With video gaming, it's registered, you
Yes,
know, what
right.
happened that day, that minute. So I don't know how we track this, I suppose we just say, well, whatever, report it on your income tax, you know.
Alderwoman Morris?
Was that all your questions?
I have one more.
Oh,
I knew you had another. Go ahead.
So you want to talk old?
go ahead and wrap up.
What was, yeah, this is the last one. The green stamps, I don't know, what was the implication of like green stamps that you received? Those are coupons that you received, and again, I don't know if there was any sort of a tax or any sort of, you know, redeeming those for prizes. Is there any sort of?
So I'm not that is the big distinction between video gaming and these is, you know, the two distinctions. One is that there's no revenue from the tax that comes from these, and there's no license that you could get per terminal like you can with the video gaming. I mean, you could draft an ordinance that would make it a similar license and have a license fee, but the tax on this would be difficult because it is you're getting a credit, so to speak, a sweepstake to then purchase some type of catalog that's online, and then the tax for that would be the online tax that's regulated by the state. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, yeah, it does, it does.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound appealing to me. So I'm not too in favor of it.
Alderwoman?
Okay, so it sounds like our options are to prohibit or license it, right? That's it,
Correct.
in a nutshell. And so it sounds like we already have people with it in town.
I think one that we
One.
know of. Yep.
One person.
Yep.
So are we going to tell them to get rid of it if we were to prohibit it? Or do we license it and make it like the video gambling stuff where we put, hey, let's have a maximum of 2 this time, you know, or, I don't know, just a thought.
City manager?
At this point, it's pretty easy. We can just enforce the code, which doesn't allow for it. But what's up before you tonight is, do you want it to be allowed? And if you do, then we have to change the code to allow it, put language in to allow it. So right now, it's not allowed. There's no description of this in the code.
But it's not disallowed either.
You could say
Our
probably.
definition of gambling,
Yeah.
but it would be better if we tighten that too.
Either way,
Yeah.
as I said, either way, you need to specify what your preference is.
Mhm.
And here is the most democratic of all opportunities to say, we want this or we don't want this. You're the deciding body, you're the policymaking body, you write the code. And there's no state prohibition against doing it either way. So it's up to you.
You know, I think with video gambling, we said we're going to pause, no more licenses, but we didn't remove from those that are existing. With this, with one establishment that went ahead and did this, I don't think there was any conversation with the city whether it was allowed or not. I'm okay with one, removing them if we give them a time frame. I don't know, they could be under contract, there could be some extenuating circumstances there, absolutely. But I think we could specify if we want to remove, we're going to remove them, and then we can act as business-friendly as possible to that one establishment that has them on the actual revocation of those terminals. We got Alderman Verbeck first.
I heard allow and enforce, and my concern is that enforce component, and really, don't we have better things to do with our time? That's all I'll add.
Alderman Perkins.
So to clarify, just thinking out loud here with the typical video gambling, there are agreements with those things that go out years, quite literally, because even though the gambling establishments aren't buying the machines, they're leasing them for extended periods of time. So I think that would be a homework piece, is if we do say, we're not going to do this, to get with the business owner and find out what commitment they've made for these 4 machines, and then what are the implications of that? Just as a point of clarification.
Yeah. From a consideration standpoint, I know city staff is wondering, do we want to allow these or not? So I guess that's the first question I have for you all. I mean, do we want to not allow these?
No, thanks.
I'm for not allowing them. Yeah.
Not
I'm
allowed.
for not allowing them.
Okay. Yep.
I suppose I hesitate, not because I think they add any value to our community, but I suppose the value that they add is in aiding business owners in making their business model viable, right? And at the same time, I do feel like these are predatory in nature, most likely, and so not adding value to our community. But I just don't like telling business owners over and over again, you can't, you can't, you can't. So.
Well, yeah, and I totally understand and sympathize. I think a lot of times we're the exact opposite. We're not telling them you can't, you can't, you can't.
Right.
The only time we ever say you can't, seems like, is when it comes to the video gambling component. City manager, you were going to say something? Or?
I was just going to say, this is in a grocery store, so their business model
Is a grocery store.
Pretty tight around the sale of groceries and dry goods. So this was, they're looking at some percentage. I don't know how they calculated it. A little extra, a little margin there. I can't begrudge that. My suggestion would be, from the staff level, that we disallow it. That's what I'm hearing from you, and we go and I'll personally do it on behalf of the staff and connect and find out what a reasonable period of time is. Although the longer that's there, especially as we
Right.
get toward the holidays and people are looking for a little fun, is what it says in the advertisement. I think you invite more people just starting up, and now we're Now it is a whack-a-mole. Over here, I've got some on the north side, some on the south side, some on the east side. Now you have a real problem, as Alderman Perkins said. Now you've got a proliferation, which is real hard then to back up.
Alderman Perkins?
And one more point, just to clarify my position on this. So we do have, whatever the number is, 8, 10 places that are allowing video gambling. And part of it is it's auditable, it's controlled by the state. Another piece of it is that there's revenue for the state, there's revenue for the locale. With this other one that's just coming out, it's not auditable. We've got no control over it, we've got no stake in it. So there's a whole host of reasons that make me uncomfortable with it. In addition to arguably being, they don't have the same constraints, competitive constraints that our existing businesses already have. Because, there's frankly, there aren't as many pieces or folks with hands in the pie for whatever their revenue number is. So I think that's a bit of an advantage for this entity, and we've got no stake in controlling any of it, or we haven't taken a position in controlling any of it. So just my thought.
So what I'm hearing is we would like city staff to bring this back to us with an ordinance disallowing these or adding it to our, however you want to do it, that we need to make sure that it's clearly understood that this is not something that city council has approved in the city of DeKalb. And then Bill, city staff will work with the current single kiosk occupied owner on a time frame to remove those from their establishment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
based
then
off of their
there'll be an
contract.
opportunity, or maybe several more, for more discussion, and if
Yep.
there's a business, in addition to this, that's in the process, and we don't know this, negotiating with a company that sells, or, leases these machines, and they should know too, and we should
Yeah.
let the public come and speak.
It's interesting, I had a business owner reach out to me and say, I thought you guys didn't allow this stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a lot out there
Yeah.
that see those as, no, that's something we don't do in the city of DeKalb, yeah. Okay, awesome, thanks, council. All right, moving on to number 2, consideration of the city's electrical contracts and municipal aggregation bids. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderwoman Larson. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. As I say in the background, we have 3 electrical contracts that are coming due at the end of this year. One for the airport, one for our street lighting broadly across the city, and for our well and treatment plants. And then this is also the time of year when we have an opportunity to weigh in behalf of our residents on the electrical aggregation scene. So there's a fair amount of background here. I'm not going to read through it all. One point I want to make, which I did make in the background, for reasons that you're well aware of, energy prices are historically high right now and very volatile. And what often happens with the 3 contracts that I referred to, the airport, street lighting, wells and treatment, we ask for a couple of years and then 5 years out, just to see what they're showing. So obviously, as the years go along, if you buy into a 5-year contract, your rate's going to go down, but you don't know at this point with the volatility if it's going to go down enough to overtake that base provider, which is ComEd. So I want to thank Brian Favor and Carrie Dittman for looking at this carefully and helping me in my assessment of where we are. We looked at each of these in terms of the contracts that we have to act upon. The street lighting, for one, it was pretty clear that ComEd, we did go out to bid, by the way, and we got the bids that you can see on page 4, on top of page 4, that are spread out over 12 months through 60 months. The street lighting contract, we feel, should go to ComEd. It's the current rate is extraordinary, and the lowest bid price that was even close was, even over an extended term, was not close enough. Airport, again, we think for some of the same reasons, the best choice for the energy supplier is ComEd. We have a different recommendation for the well and treatment plants. The Constellation bid, which Constellation is one of those private firms that bid on this and bids on it every year. They came in with a price that even over 36 months and other, it seems to be a pretty safe bet. It's not perfect how we're going to arrive in 3 months, but based on our judgment, we feel there's some savings there, so we recommend the Constellation bid. And by the way, that's on your agenda tonight a little bit further on. Electrical aggregation, we looked real hard at this because last year there was some criticism, why didn't you take why did you stick with ComEd? And at that point, the prices weren't quite as volatile, although ComEd was clearly the low bid for a year. We've looked at this every which way and feel that ComEd again is recommended because of the pure uncertainty of what happens even 24 months out right now. All the financial prognosticators are spitballing this one. They're not sure where we're going to be in energy. So I would recommend that we be cautious. We can look at this again next year, and if we felt we were too conservative, we can go at it again, and maybe there'll be a better bid, and we'll feel more comfortable going out 2 years rather than 3 years or more. That would be our recommendation at this point.
Council, questions, comments? Alderman Perkins.
So what's our overall spend on this? How much money are we talking about generally? And then from
Generally,
there plus or minus a little bit?
Yeah, and of course, I don't have my budget with me, but it's we're talking about every street light in town. Wells and probably the biggest energy focus is going to be the well and treatment plants. Maybe Andy can spitball that, but maybe not. Yeah. Yeah. Thousands.
350-ish?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think that on the plus side, going out and doing these future side of things, we know what we're in for from a budget perspective. You know, that variability kind of cements it in. So, you know, that's just a thought, you know, is the predictability of the number, you know. And somewhere in there is the risk for that predictability. You know, that's the offsetting element.
So if we were buying CDs, we'd be betting right now, go longer than we have, right?
Right.
A year ago, we were saying go short. This is a little different, because if we go long, it could be short, and we, you know, anyway, and we got tied into a contract we can't get out of. So that's our concern. So we're basically going short across the board, but we did see a break in the pricing on the well and treatment plant installations that seem to make sense to go outside of the box and hit, so that's why we recommended that. So I see your point.
Alderman Favor.
Is the street lighting, is that, because the ComEd rate there is actually lower than the well and treatment plants, is that, are we just floating at 5 cents for the street lighting? Or is the street lighting under contract?
It's all under contract right now, but what we're saying is we want to continue the contract with ComEd.
So I guess my question is, why, so we're at 5 cents.
Yeah.
In the well and treatment plants are going to be at, well, 5.1 versus 5.8 cents.
Yeah. The street lighting is remarkably lower.
Is that just a high, but, so on the flip side, I thought the wells was the higher usage.
It is. So it's also a variable usage because we, the biggest draw is during the day, so we cycle down, if you will, at night, and where we don't have as much pumping responsibility. So that variability is another ingredient that we throw in here. I'm not the consultant who did the calculation, but this is the number that they came up with, and it looks like Constellation is the best way to go on the wells and treatment plants.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to go, sorry.
Okay.
I was just trying to go back to the, you know, Right now, the
current ComEd rate
residential
on the
rate
wells-
is 11%.
The
and-
current ComEd price on the wells is .089, and even if you go out 3 years, is .0539. So we're saying, we could and we were only talking about 3 months here, or 3 years rather, but we could go even probably to 60 months and hit the jackpot with Constellation on the wells and treatment plants.
I guess, on the wells and treatment, what is the contract we're going to recommend, or is being recommended?
What's your, if you read a little bit
Constellation
further, it's a
for
36 months.
Oh,
Okay.
36.
All right. Thank you.
Alderwoman Larson?
I don't really have a question, but our farm is constantly monitoring electric usage as well as some of the other pundits in the ag world. And their thoughts are that with ComEd being so nuclear and that our state has stepped behind them to keep the, like Byron and different places open, that they'll be a steadier, like price-wise, so that, you know, a lot of it is they're saying Russia and the war, Putin wants, you know, if you get into that whole thing, that oil and different things would be more volatile. And that if we can stick with ComEd, we might have a flatter. So I'm not sure if that adds anything, but.
Alderman Faber?
Because the daily rates are higher, so for pumping and everything, have we looked at potentially, you know, putting in a safety margin of where we would allow the water tanks to get down to, and then try and make up that difference then overnight pumping when electric rates are lower? But I don't think that would be negated with a contract,
Yeah.
correct?
Brian was here, and he's not able to make it tonight. No one knows better than him how we do that. And yes, we do, obviously, we fill overnight. We have to have that capacity during the day, but then it can be refilled at night and at a lower rate. So there is a lot of thought has gone in over the years to what that level is, what that does to our costs, what it does to capacity, and it's a it's a finely tuned little operation, and they're pretty savvy about that. I'm not going to sit here and try to repeat all those considerations. So.
No, thank you, I appreciate that.
And after one of our pumps failed too, just the thought of lowering all of our tanks, trusting that every pump is going to work over the nighttime. They may be fine with that. Just makes me have a little bit of pause.
Right, no, I was thinking, you know, and like you say, they may be doing that already. There might be some sort of, there's probably a level that we float, you know, a certain amount that we leave open for pumping at night. And I was just saying, you know, could we do that? And if we didn't, but I think if we have an electric contract, I think all of the energy, 24 hours, is going to be at the same rate. So that might negate having to do some of those gymnastics with the
So I
potential
guess I should
pumping.
explain. So how does this process unfold? So you've got somebody like Brian Faber, who's been director of the water, of our utility for 20-some years, and he has grown into that calculation on a daily basis and so forth. Then we have a separate consultant over here who's the master of the electrical rates per usage. And those two then get together and talk about what our objective is in the next year, what might happen in 3 years or 5 years. And then we go to bid, so we write the bids accordingly, what are our biggest fears, what are our greatest concerns, and we get responses. So that's the process now. Without spending a fair amount of our time on that, we're never going to replicate that. So there's a little bit of trust here, but I have to say I trust who's doing it for us, who's looking at our system.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Alderman Perkins.
So one last one then. So just to clarify then, so today, all of our electricity is, we spot buy all of our electricity today, right? And what we're recommending here is going out into the future and solidifying some of it for periods of time, differing periods of time based on the energy contract, right?
Yeah,
So
ComEd's rate
we are
fluctuates.
firming our pricing to a
Yeah.
degree.
ComEd's rate fluctuates like this all the time.
Mhm.
Constellation and these other private providers are going to lock in their rate. So therein lies the potential and the risk. So that's all I can, I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I think it does, because I'm approaching it from a risk perspective.
Yeah.
From a risk and from a budgeting perspective. Is right now, if we're all spot buying
Yeah.
everything, then, yeah, we can win and we can
We can
lose.
lose.
But we don't, there's nothing that's really firm from a
Right.
budgeting perspective. So by going out and firming some of these numbers, we firm what the number is, maybe not entirely for all of our electricity consumption, but to a degree, we do. So we're firming a piece of it, and we're not spot buying everything. So
Yeah.
that seems to, it seems to mitigate some of the risk to a degree.
Certainly.
It's a more predictable number.
Agreed.
I
And we're
mean, the
going
risk is
short.
we could end up paying a lot less if we wouldn't have done that, but we also could pay a lot more. So you're
But-
saying it's more comfortable fixing it.
Well,
Now our
and-
budget is fixed as well.
And then it's consistent, we know what we budgeted it at.
Yeah, right.
You know, so then we're gonna have one less thing to explain in the
Yeah.
budget when,
Right.
but to your point, you know, all these commodities are high right now.
Yeah.
They're really high, so I don't think there's an argument to go long on these things. I think there is an argument to spot buy some of it, but I think there's a place to firm some of it too, for predictability in our planning, you know? So,
Which is what we're doing at the wells and treatment plants, yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions, Council? So this is a consideration, we're looking to city staff to come back?
Well,
Or
we
does
are
it- you
coming
just go
back with
forward?
one thing later on this agenda.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah, you're right,
And then-
yep.
Yeah. we
Assuming,
will.
yeah, we would have,
Right,
yeah, okay.
right.
All right, moving on to agenda item K, resolutions. Number one, resolution 2022-096, authorizing a city hall mural contract with Danielle Casali in an amount not to exceed $30,000. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman McAdams, seconded by Alderwoman Morris. City Manager.
So there's been a conversation in our community, in the downtown, and often in our Citizens Enhancement Committee meetings about more art in our town, and particularly public art. Private businesses have taken upon themselves to do some pretty remarkable things, and more recently. But it's only in the last couple of years that the city government has been funding this art, and we've done it modestly at first, and now I think we're on the verge of doing more and larger canvases, if you will, particularly as we're looking at the sides of buildings. So the CEC, the Citizens Community Enhancement Commission, has just in the last 2-3 months invited bids on a number of different places where public art could be seen, from more fire hydrants to some of the big electrical panels in the downtown area, and to sides of buildings. And the possibility of doing something on the south side of City Hall was very much of interest to the CEC and of interest to our city staff, the mayor, and to other members of council. And in particular, to try to find some kind of a belonging theme that spoke to that initiative, which we have been speaking to and acting on for a year and a half or more. And so one artist has, after some discussion over the summer and here into the early fall, distinguished her work in the eyes of the CEC. Her name is Danielle Casali, and she has been her work has been recommended by the CEC to create the mural for the south side of the City Hall, facing the railroad tracks, and it's a large canvas, 40 feet high, 30 feet wide or thereabouts, and she has experience with those sizes of public art installations, and what you're seeing here are some of those. And most recently in our neck of the woods in DeKalb County, she did something on a grand scale, even larger in Hinckley, and also is fond of incorporating the efforts of children and locals who want to participate. Her specialty are mosaics and glass cuttings, I guess, that like you think of stained glass, so it'd be stained glass renderings on the side of the City Hall in this case. We asked for a price for an as yet undefined drawing, but if you're going to cover this much and it's going to take you about this long, what would that be? And she provided a not to exceed price of $30,000. And that's what's before you tonight. This would be a project that wouldn't be started this fall. It's something that requires warm weather, and we're running out of that, although today was a lovely day. Not many more of these, so we're looking at a spring kickoff to this. The city's share at this point is $10,000. Obviously, there's a T-Mobile grant out there that can support the balance. There may be interest on the CEC to use some of that for something else. We have a little more set aside. We'll talk about the budget within 30 days here, but have a little something in case we needed more. I think we've met with her. She's very creative. I like we at the staff level like the idea of incorporating some interested art students, grad students, others in working on this. This is done the old-fashioned way. It has to be something that's going to attach and stay attached to a masonry building, and so there's going to be scaffolding. This isn't just do it in a workshop and hang it. So it would be a months-long project. It would generate a lot of interest, I think, in the downtown and what we're trying to do as a city.
And I met with City Manager Nicholas and members of the Community Enhancement Commission. And to Bill's point, he said it, but I just want to reinforce it. This whole idea of creating a sense of belonging in our community, she glommed right onto that because the mural that she did in Hinckley, it was just that. She engaged so many members of the community where they essentially co-created the mural together, which I thought was really cool, that it's not just an artist that's putting it up. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be engaged that can say, I did that. And we have 3, I think, murals on the back of City Hall now, all faded, all showing their wear. With this, I mean, stained glass doesn't fade. So this is something that quite literally could be up on the back of City Hall, our core institution, proclaiming that this is a community where everyone belongs. So I was pretty excited listening to her talk about it. Council. Yes, Alderman Berber.
Love it. Thank you for putting a little extra in the budget, because what I would like to see is a camera, as we've had some unwelcome spray painting on some of our other efforts where beautification really makes all the difference in the world.
Yep.
And also maybe in that budget, some means of sustaining that artwork into the future, whether it's that artist or someone else, making sure that looks great on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, good point. Alderman Perkins.
So what does the progress on the other murals look like? Because looking at this real quick, this is going to consume 40% of that $50,000 budget. So
Right.
What's the crystal ball look like for the others?
So we're still looking for some partners. We've talked to NIU about the underpass. One of the targeted areas was there, the underpass on Annie Glidden. We had some interest from some artists in that, but they were thinking smaller scale, like something that might be 20. That's Andy, how long is that on each side? 108? 80?
80,
180
yeah.
feet.
It's big.
And they were thinking like 20-foot multiples for a sizable amount of money, that there wouldn't be a feasible way to do that. So something grand that just basically said, welcome to NIU. Maybe something a little spicier, but that's basically what we're trying to say. You are in Husky country. So we didn't get that done. We're still working on it. We need to just get the right request out there so people know exactly, that's what we want. We don't want there a scene of, as grand, we had a couple, they're beautiful, of the sun setting on cornfields. Love that scene. That's why, we all love that about our area. But that missed the point. So we didn't get enough that wanted to do something with the NIU theme and the city NIU unity. So more to do. So where's the money come from?
Well, and do we have any rough numbers on what that, I'm just spitballing.
No, that-
Well,
the napkin math.
we didn't get the responses to know, you know.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we got some that it was going to be a great work of art in 20 feet. So it was going to be the Pieta there, but, and everybody would love it, but you can't stop there and admire it, right? You're going 45 miles an hour.
Right.
Or whatever.
So that conversation has been evolving
Yeah.
over the last couple of
Yeah.
months. And there's been multiple conversations working with NIU, their branding and marketing team, designs, NIU athletics, trying to figure out what's the best thing. And then also what is the material going to be?
Right.
Is it painted on?
Yeah.
Then there's concrete issues and this and that. So it's been one of those things that the canvas has caused delays in
Yeah.
conversation of what is the material that we're going to adhere to it that is going to stand the test of time, essentially. So I think it'd be great if we could kick something off this year. I doubt it.
Not going to happen
Yeah.
this year. And
Right.
vandalism, unfortunately, we at least once a month, we have, our street department has to get out there and clean off, graffiti. So that's a worry.
So it's moving, it's still moving.
Okay, got it.
It's a moving target.
Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But we're getting first downs, the ball's moving.
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah. I don't know if that's a good analogy right now.
Single through the gap.
We are, yeah. Any other comments or questions, council? Alderwoman Morris.
So I know I was the liaison to the CCEC when they designed their mural policy, so I'm very familiar with it. But I guess I'm looking for a refresher on what degree of say are we going to have in the end? I want to see what this looks like before we put it on the wall. And I want to be like, yes, that's good.
yeah.
We'll bring,
Yeah.
no,
Well, why?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
clear in the mural policy, there ought to be
Okay.
that overview. You're right, and you did a good job of that, and we'll come back.
Yeah.
This isn't going to be,
Boy, did they miss
we
the
don't
mark.
want that.
Yeah, and the Enhancement Commission is very aware too that any recommendation they make will come before council for final approval as well. Yeah,
Before the work starts.
before the work, yes.
That's clear, and the contract says that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
But first, we have to engage with the artists, come up with the designs, and then we can approve which design we want to move forward with, for sure.
I'm just hoping for a really cohesive, belonging mural,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so that it's not too disparate, yeah.
I think she's going to crush it,
Okay.
actually.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you'll make sure that
Yes.
she does.
Any other comments or questions, council? Okay, hearing none. This is a resolution, so hearing none. Roll call, I guess.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
7-0.
Resolution 2022-096 passes. Moving on to number 2, Resolution 2022-097, authorizing the purchase of one Bobcat L38 small articulated loader and attachments through CSR Bobcat Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $52,985.79. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderwoman Morris, seconded by Alderman Favor. City Manager.
I gave you some background here, and I wanted to highlight that Andy Rye has done some very creative bidding and budget manipulation here, so that we had some savings last year. It was not as, we had a number of snowfalls, but we didn't have the heavy, heavy snowfalls we had from several years ago. So there were some savings in that line item in our budget. We had also some savings in other parts and supply sections of the street budget. So as we considered how we're going to remove snow from the wider sidewalks downtown, and thought about going out to bid for private contractors and anticipating what that bid would be. We know what our bids have been in recent years for much narrower sidewalks. Andy volunteered the possibility, after visiting with his departments, of our doing this with the principal difference in terms of investment, this Bobcat. And so that's why it's before you tonight, and I support it. I think if we had nobody we knew in the leadership in the street department, I guess I'd wonder whether this, maybe we'll try something else, and then we'll work into this. But I trust no one as much as I trust Danny Rye when it comes to these things. So I feel if anybody can make this work at a very economic cost to us, we're not talking overtime. Guys are out there anyway when we're plowing snow, and he's going to have to stay. Even if he's in this or somebody else, I know it'll get done. So don't mean to embarrass him, but this is about the safest bet I'm making on this agenda tonight. But you may think otherwise.
Counsel? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to second that. I have no doubt that Andy will get it done. There have been many evenings where I have been somewhere in town and Andy's been out there with a shovel, hand shoveling snow. And so I'm sure this is a good idea. I can almost guarantee it.
Any other questions, comments? Yeah, and I'd love, Bill and I have talked about maybe a special service area for the downtown to fund various projects, things like that. That's something we'll continue to talk about.
And I think, I was going to add that, I think if this doesn't work, then we look broader. But we feel this is something within our grasp, and nobody knows that the street division better than Andy. So he's saying, give me a chance, boss. So I think we do it.
Any other comments, questions, council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
Resolution 2022-097 passes. Moving on to number 3, Resolution 2022-098, rejecting a bid by Fisher Excavating in the amount of $769,869.20 for 290 feet of water main replacement on North First Street across the Kishwaukee River. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman Perkins. City Manager.
This is a good one. It doesn't cost us anything. If you decide to
great.
reject. So we're doing some bridge projects, and one of them will require relocation and replacement of a water main section. This one does not, this particular area on North First Street at the bridge that's going to be replaced next year. Although there's a really troublesome stretch of water main when we went to bid, they came in several times higher than our engineering estimate, well beyond any budget that we could imagine for this project. And so our view is we can't just let the bid hang. The council has to accept or reject it. We recommend you reject it. And we look ahead. We maybe make another run at this in another year or so. But it's one of those that's been spliced many times and needs to be ultimately replaced.
Council. Hearing no questions or comments, roll call, please.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
I'm sorry.
Yes.
So it says city council rejection of the bid is recommended, and so by voting yes, I am supporting rejection.
Correct.
Yes.
We're approving
Yes.
this resolution, which is rejecting. Yep.
Got it. Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
7-0.
All right, Resolution
Thank you.
2022-098 passes. Moving on to number 4, Resolution 2022-099, authorizing the appropriation of local funds and a joint funding agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation for the extension of a multi-use path along Fairview Drive for an estimated $18,500. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderwoman Morris, seconded by Alderman Perkins. City Manager.
What we're talking about is not the full cost of what this bike path extension would be, but it's our local share. And this is a multi-use bike path, as it says in the background. It's going to be on Fairview. It's going to help people who work on this stretch of industrial, many industrial giants, actually, to get to and from work, either walking or riding a bicycle, as many do. And we've talked about this for some time. It's been delayed a little bit by the delay in getting the Peace Road project really up and running in full, but as that is happening, next year we'll be incorporating this. But now's the time for us to act on this so that IDOT can go to bid, knowing that we're good for the local share.
Council, questions?
Comment,
All in
I
favor?
think it's wonderful. I think it's great to continue to connect the bike paths together. Yeah, and make it more walkable community. I think it's fantastic.
Alderwoman Morris.
I agree. I'm super excited about another, an extension of a bike path. I think it is challenging to find safe places to ride a bike here sometimes, so I am thrilled to see this extension.
Any others? All right, roll call, please.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
Resolution 2022-099 passes. Number 5, Resolution 2022-100, adopting the recommendation of the Transit Site Selection Committee for the new transit maintenance and operations facility at the Dresser Road location and approving the final minutes of and dissolving the Transit Site Selection Committee. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderwoman Larson, seconded by Alderman McAdams. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And if I falter on this particular item, we have 3 people in the audience who can pick me up. Zach Gill is here, of course. Mike Newen-Kirchen is here also as our transit director. And Tim Holdeman with the EEI Enterprises engineering consulting firm that has been working as a sub with Stantec. So there's history here. I don't have to recapitulate it. We've been talking about some place that would hold a new transit center that would be able to enclose the buses that you see sitting outside right now at what we call the transit center, but it's really not a transit center. It's a bus barn. Long history, have been serving us. It's reached that point where it's not serving us with what we think is the potential for that service to our residents. So the council back in the fall, about a year ago, created a transit committee to look into this and to work with Stantec as they do more of their technical work to come up with a number of alternatives for the council, not just one, which is where we had been about that point. And Councilmember Tracy Smith is not here tonight, but he was the council liaison. From NIU, we had Delvin Collins from representing the student government, Jennifer Gross, the outreach division, community representative Ellingsworth Webb, local business Matt Duffy of the DeKalb Chamber, and general construction Steve Irving, with respect to the suitability of constructing a building on some site. I think this committee did very able work. I didn't attend all the meetings. Attended some of them. Zach Gill was a staff liaison in supporting their work. Work with Stantec. There's a very detailed breakdown in your background tonight, not in the background that I give, but actually in the digital background online, of how they arrived at their recommendation. But I will say the 3 sites that they considered most worthy of your attention were the City Dresser Road site, which we have talked about some in the past. Also a 52-plus acre site on Barbara Green Road. It had 2 parcels. And then not quite a 16 acre, so it was a slightly smaller site, but a 60-acre site on West Lincoln Highway but more proximate to where the core of the ridership was. So a lot of detailed estimating went in here, the deadhead analyses, in other words, how long it, how far away that it is in terms of where you pick up the buses and then go to where your riders are every morning, every cycle, every evening, and so forth. Neighborhood impacts, road impacts, acquisition costs for land, ecological impacts, zoning, any queuing on the site that would create problems for surrounding properties, the general topography, a list of another 10 items. And so the committee's recommendation after looking at all of this, and then they created a rating scale, a weighted rating scale, was to fall on the Dresser Road site. Now, that did have an advantage going in that in terms of the cost, one of the 15, 20 odd variables that helped in the rating, and also the proximity. I think probably the strongest piece of that was the proximity to the core, most populated area that is every day using the transit system as we know it today, and as it might grow in the future, because they had to have a forward sight on this. So that's what's before you tonight. We put this up as a resolution. At this point, we have the funding in place to do all the design for this center. We are also we have a commitment to construct the center, but we have to get going on something. And so I feel at this point in this fall we need to make a decision. It's up before you tonight. I don't think the committee can do any more than it has at this point. So welcome your thoughts.
Council? Well, Alderwoman Morse? I think you beat her.
Well, I'm not ecstatic that it's at Dresser Road, but I think they did their due diligence. This background report is really thorough and robust, and I appreciate the site selection committee's. I really like that they did a weighted numerical value to the locations, and I think that helps make the argument for putting it there very strong.
Alderwoman Larson?
I just think back on our history of when different things have happened in the city, when the second runway was a proposal and people were like, oh no, it's gonna ruin this and that in our neighborhood. And of course, down on South 4th Street with the Meta project and Farrar and everything, it has severely impacted those houses along there. And it's one of those things, I know everybody wants it, but nobody wants it in their backyard. But I think the city has done their due diligence, and it's not just lightly decided we're gonna put it here. It makes sense for all the right reasons, but I do appreciate there'll be some families that will pay a little bit higher price or impact a little bit more than others. But I think my vote will be yes, because I think in the long run, it's where it should be in DeKalb.
Alderman McAdams?
We asked for options. They reviewed it, and they've given us options, and I think that this is the best option. I'm going to vote yes as well.
Alderman Verbeek?
Yeah, please pass along thanks to the committee. Again, made my concerns known early and often, but the reality in front of us is that this is the best possible alternative, all things considered. So again, thanks to the committee.
Alderman Perkins?
Yeah, kudos to the committee. You know, the backup, it's very detailed, even-handed approach, so kudos, I'll be voting yes for it.
Alderwoman Morse?
I know I had emphasized it to our past transportation leader, and so I just want to get it on the record that I think it's really important as we move forward, considering the environmental impact of buses, that we move toward hybrid models as much as possible and move toward electric buses because of what we're doing to the environment where people are living. So I think that that's critical over time that we're prioritizing that.
Come up to the mic, Mike.
Yeah, Sidney Alderman Morris, but you're correct. And really, what we're seeing from the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, is there's a real push towards incentivizing the purchase of electric vehicles. In fact, I was just through a call on that recently, because there's also, it's beyond just, hey, let's get some electric buses. There's also infrastructure issues that are involved. So part of it is having a transit facility that we can develop an electric infrastructure within to charge these vehicles. Because right now, like if we were to say to our operator, bring in some electric vehicles, there would be some serious electrical upgrades that they would have to do on that site, which they may or may not be able to do. So this is the way I view it, as moving forward with this facility actually helps us to address that for the future. So I think it's a win-win.
Cool. So from what you just said right now, it sounds to me like you are anticipating future electric needs for vehicles and building that into the infrastructure?
That is correct. I mean, and that is actually where the bus industry is being pushed by the federal government. So that's, I think that's where we're going to be headed.
Awesome.
So it's, it's just recognizing the inevitable and preparing for it. This facility will help us to establish that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Any other comments or questions? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
Resolution 2022-100, passes. All right, number 6, Resolution 2022-101, authorizing the negotiation of an agreement for the provision of wholesale electricity for water wells and water treatment plants in the city of DeKalb. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman Verbeek. City Manager.
Thank you. And it alluded to this item. This is for the well and treatment plants. And again, the recommendation is go with an alternate energy supplier, which is Constellation. And just a little caveat here. When we go in to the market and you've got one day to kind of do it, and we're not doing it, I'm not doing it. The consultant we work with would be recommending the right time to do that. So hopefully we get a price that's basically what we've set up for you in our background, and that's our best guess.
Additional comments or questions, Council? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
Resolution 2022-101 passes. Number 7, Resolution 2022-102, authorizing the award of a contract to Curran Contracting Incorporated in the amount of $213,753.36 for the resurfacing of Ridge Drive with staff authority to approve change orders up to a combined project total not to exceed $222,000. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderwoman Larson. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This section of Ridge Drive is in terrible shape. Those of you who've driven this
It's brutal.
won't argue that point. We're talking about belonging here. If you want other people, leave a road like this unpaved. So I think this is a very timely and necessary expenditure. The CDBG funds will help us with this expenditure, and we recommend your approval.
Council, comments, questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
Resolution 2022-102 passes.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item L, ordinances, second reading. Number 1, ordinance 2022-047, authorizing a development agreement with American Marketing and Publishing Company. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderman McAdams, seconded by Alderman Perkins. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. We discussed this at the last meeting, and at that time, Abe, who is the owner, stood before you and said that he had no objections to the framework of what was proposed to you last time. So I brought it back as it was proposed last time. As you know, This particular agreement is syncopated with an agreement which follows with Nearing Electric Company to try to bring a more creative and global solution to a variety of traffic issues and congestion issues and noise issues and the like. And in this case, there will be some new parking stalls installed on North 9th Street. Up to that point where we had talked about a cul-de-sac, it'll be sort of a modified cul-de-sac, more like instead of closing the loop at the top, that would be an area where the trucks backing into the Nearing dock at 9th and Locust would then be able to just leave down. So it is remain a public street, but there'll be perpendicular parking in what is now the Parkway on the American Marketing side. And the roadway, the two-way roadway, will be shifted just a little bit to the west in that configuration. And it also provides for some ingress and egress points on 10th Street, because if Locust Street is vacated by the city as a public street, then even with cross easements, there may be daily issues with people who aren't familiar with the area. Can I park here? Can I not? And so forth. So that seemed to be a necessary feature, and we proposed that last time, and with your support, I brought it back. Also, that sidewalk on the south side of Locust would remain a public sidewalk, so that people walking to and from work, wherever they're going, in that area, would be able to do so unimpeded.
Council, questions, comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
Ordinance 2022-047 passes on second reading.
Motion to waive.
No, that's second reading.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Never mind.
Appreciate it, though.
Oh, sure.
Number two, ordinance 2022-048, authorizing a development agreement with Nearing Electrical Works Company. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderman Perkins, seconded by Alderman Favor. City Manager.
This also comes back to you on the second reading. So we spent some time talking also about the fact that Nearing Electric Company is expanding, and as it's been growing, it's grown in some directions that neighbors have found been a little ruffled by, and what can we do collaboratively to make all this work out? And with some considerable investment by the Nearing Company, there will be some changes in that area, particularly along North 8th Street. The Virgil Cook and Son properties acquired 8th Street and abandoned because there are no other facilities owned by other properties, others just generally. We would be vacating that part of 9th Street, as I was just describing to you, that's sort of north of this modified cul-de-sac up to Locust Street, and then Locust Street from 7th to 10th, basically. And there's an alley, which is, you drive by and without noticing it, but it's just to the west of the former Virgil Cook properties that would be vacated as well. Now, the other thing that we talked about, so this, once vacated, it's entirely the responsibility of Nearing Company to maintain as it uses these various, what used to be public streets. There is one thing that they would be inheriting if we didn't do this, and we thought it was fair for us to repair the storm catch basin and piping, which is undersized, to mitigate the ponding which happens whenever there's a major storm, rainstorm at 9th and Locust is where the ponding is, and it really takes over the street and goes east and west and south along 9th Street. So this will help. We're going to make every effort to do that yet this fall and get lined up on that. We'll probably go out. We have a little bit in a capital fund to do that. If we can't get that done, and it's our hope to do that, I think we can do it then that'll be done first thing in the spring, as will the paving that we had promised on this. So we feel this is fair and to all parties. There's one other piece which is on here as an ordinance first reading, which I hope we go to second reading on, and that's a little parking change on East Locust from 10th over to 11th on the south side to allow resident-only parking there. I think it's being observed now, but it would be the appropriate thing for us to call it what it is, and we have talked to the neighbors about that and also to the Nearing Company, and it seems to be agreeable.
City Council. Questions, comments? Alderman Verbeck.
Great work, city manager, your team, Alderman Perkins.
Yeah.
Just exceptional all the way around, making it a win-win situation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Larson.
I apologize, this question might be coming a little after the fact. Takes my brain sometimes. Okay, so I know we let Nearing have one of the, not have, but turn that one property, the empty lot, into parking. And I know we're going to be having these additional parking spaces.
Yeah.
There is some kind of a rule about how many parking spaces a business would have to have? Because I know with Nearing, it's hard because they've got double shifts. I mean, when you got one shift coming and one shift still working, that's a problem, because then half an hour into the shift, all those people are gone. So you don't need them, but that is part of the problem that causes this. And I know with that future thing, is this, are we getting to the point that we're getting close to having enough
We
to
are.
alleviate this?
We are, so, but here's it's classic, right? We've got established companies that have been here for over 100 years, at least Nearing has, and American Marketing has been here for 25-plus years. So, and American Marketing, by the way, is the 8th largest employer in town, 351 people in 2021. So a lot of cars potentially through, as you say, through multiple shifts. If the TIF had been used the way, it's easy for me to say this now, it should have been, this would have been a great redevelopment project for all concerned, from 7th to 10th and Lincoln Highway up to the tracks and north of that, into Dimco and on and on. There wasn't, it had nothing to do with this council, but previous councils didn't have that vision and administrations. So we're left with trying to make the best of a situation with not the same dedicated public funds for it. So it's not perfect, but it's using every inch of space on those highways and byways in that area, I think, to try to make it better. And I applaud, and Alderman Perkins was in it from the beginning. His pushing, come on, we can do a little better, could we look at this, we look at that, and so that's where we are. That may not answer your question to the number, but I think we are definitely going to be closer. We're adding more spaces, and they're going to be more proximate to the businesses that need them, if that helps.
Okay.
Alderman Perkins.
I'll say the same thing. Kudos to city staff. It was a collaborative effort between a lot of folks, getting together and trying to get, and using the multiple heads to create the bigger, smarter head.
Yeah.
And I think the creativity really shows through.
And our city
Kudos.
engineer, as always, in these matters, came up with a lot of innovative ideas that none of us thought of.
Mhm.
Any others? I would take a motion to approve, or no, a roll call, I guess, at this point. Dang it, I was trying to give you a, roll call, please.
Faber,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbeck,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
7-0.
Ordinance 2022-048 passes on second reading. All right, moving on to agenda item M, ordinances first reading. This will be the ordinance 2022-051. I have multiple, thanks, Mr. Jakowski, for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom.
I have multiple speaker request forms, so I figure we'll do those first. The first one I have is Dwayne Brown. Dwayne, if you want to come up. And just as a, what? I think we do public comments before, or do we do a motion to bring it to the floor and then public comments?
I think you need to bring it to the floor.
Do we? Oh, okay, all right, hang on, Dwayne. I would take a motion to bring ordinance 2022-05, nope. Yes, ordinance 2022-051, amending Chapter 10 Landlord-Tenant Regulations as it pertains to the crime-free housing provisions to the floor.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderwoman Morris, seconded by Alderman McAdams. Excellent. Now, public comment. Dwayne, as a friendly reminder, we'd like to keep it to 3 minutes, please.
Dwayne Brown, 4th Ward. The proposed crime-free initiative plan seeks to strengthen the crime-free housing ordinance of 2013 by fining landlords $2,500 for the first violation, $5,000 for the second, and $10,000 for the third violation. The third violation would mandate a closure of the rental property for 12 months. You wait till the first time you do that, you're going to see the landlords file an appeal faster than the speed of light. Also, a $1,000 a day fine for every rental agreement does not include the crime-free housing provision. This is a violation of landlords' rights. These fines are unconstitutional. This plan also has a liability risk for the city for trying to enforce this ordinance, which is discriminatory to minorities, women, and the disabled. Forced evictions violate tenants and landlords' due process rights. This is a violation of the Federal Fair Housing Act and the Illinois Human Rights Act. Both prohibit discrimination in housing. Even the mayor admitted the crime-free housing hasn't worked. Why do you think it will work now? Stan James, a landlord in Rantoul, Illinois, which has a crime-free ordinance, disagrees with the village's decision to have it. I think it goes too far, he said. I think it impinges on your rights to be responsible for those who come to see you. Wendy Fuchs, who has lived in Rantoul for nearly a decade, says, I don't think it's fair, she says. Frustrated, she didn't understand before signing the addendum. She's also upset because the addendum is mandatory. It was either sign that addendum or be told to move out, and that I can't do, she said. Are you going to pass this everywhere so people can't rent, she asked. Kalila Jackson, an attorney with the Metropolitan St. Louis Equal Housing Opportunity Council, says after the landlords receive a letter from the police that too many code violations have occurred, the landlord must notify the tenant that they have to move out. The tenant will just leave without having their day in court, without ever having the system operate in the way it was designed to. Homelessness is sometimes the result. This proposal unnecessarily increases rent, causing additional red tape for landlords, targets those who can least afford legal representation, fosters distrust between landlords and tenants, and accomplishes nothing. This proposal should be placed where it belongs, and I hope the council does just that, in the garbage with the rest of the trash. And I want to comment.
Dwayne, that's 3 minutes.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Well, one more thing. The Human Relations Committee, I can't understand why they've approved this. And the DeKalb Area Rental Association, I can't understand why they would even consider this. Thank you.
All right, next I have, I can't read the writing, I'm sorry, but is it Neely Erickson? Neely? Yes. And again, friendly reminder, 3 minutes, please.
Honorable Mayor Barnes and City Council members, thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Neely Erickson, and I am the Government Affairs Director for Illinois Realtors here today on behalf of local area realtors to address you regarding the landlord-tenant regulations as it pertains to crime-free housing. We recognize the grave circumstances your city is facing, and we are not attempting to derail the process, but eliminate the unfair liability and risk for law-abiding housing providers and to protect the rights of tenants. As it stands today, there are concerns from a wide range of advocacy groups with expertise in their field, and we ask for further collaboration. At the September meeting, the city asserted that the legislature expressly exempted the use of crime-free housing provisions for the protections of the Illinois Human Rights Act. We encourage further review. The section the city is referencing, 775 ILCS 5/3-102.5, plainly and simply allows a housing provider to require that a tenant refrain from engaging in unlawful activity on the premise. The language does not allow for an arrest record to be considered sufficient evidence to evict the tenant. We highly encourage the city to listen to the House floor conversation that took place regarding this from the Senate sponsor to understand the true intent of the arrest record protections. The standard of using an arrest record to identify someone as guilty before conviction, intentionally or not, is problematic because it makes the alleged activity a violation of the rental agreement and further perpetuates housing instability for the individual and family members. Eviction before conviction threatens the principle of innocent until proven guilty, which is supposed to be the bedrock of our criminal legal system. We express appreciation to city staff for responding to the coalition letter, but the notion that our theories are only narrative is incredibly disingenuous, considering that in 2016, HUD issued guidance articulating how crime-free housing and nuisance ordinance have an impact on arrest and conviction histories and are respectively prone to violating Federal Fair Housing Act in regards to gender and discrimination. HUD has brought enforcement actions against crime-free housing and nuisance ordinances that have resulted in consent decrees, example, City of Peoria. And there has been successful private litigations against crime-free housing and nuisance ordinances, even if they have not resulted in binding precedent. There is still time to improve the City of DeKalb's ordinance to protect law-abiding housing providers from fair housing violations and prevent infringement on tenant rights. And we ask you to continue further collaboration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. William Heinisch. And as a reminder, 3 minutes, Will.
Will Heinisch. So the city staff did come to a recent DARA meeting, and you'll see that they did immediately make some changes that's presented tonight in this draft. We have had some further conversation and some additional information come to us that we would further like to see some more affirmative defenses put into the language. So what do I mean by affirmative defenses? One would be if a landlord or the landlord's designated agent calls the police, that could be an affirmative defense that they won't get charged with this ordinance. I think in part of this ordinance, you have to remember, when we started this 10 years ago, we were one of the first cities that actually, in Chapter 52, did the three-strike ordinance. If you look at other cities, a lot of them adapted similar ordinances. We're taking this to the next level, is the way I look at it at this point. What do I mean by the next level? We're trying to differentiate between the responsible landlords and the irresponsible landlords. And that's the difference that I don't think many people understand in this discussion. We've had crime-free housing for a long time. We've had the ordinance. We've had the document. But what we're trying to do is take this to the next level. And I think along with some additional affirmative defenses, I also sent some more wordsmithing of the actual ordinance to the city staff on Friday. This morning I sent some language on affirmative defenses, as well as some identification language to hold landlords in the city to back landlords if we get accused of fair housing rights violations. So that being said, that's a little bit different paradigm. And I think the key to this too is who is going to manage and run the program. There's a lot of gray area. And if you look at other municipalities, crime-free housing, and ours, and it all boils down to how it's run, how it's interpreted, and who runs the program. Quick story, 10 years ago when we started our crime-free housing, about 6 months into it, they hired an assistant. The assistant used their position to try and lever one of our landlords into renting them housing because they rented from the city. I contacted the city police chief at the time, sat down with them, and the person was terminated within 48 hours. I think we have a good relationship with the city. I think that's going forward. It's a two-way partnership, and we want to hold the negligent landlord's responsible. I think there's a little bit more tweaking we can work on this ordinance, and that's where we stand today. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. All right, city manager.
Thank you. Anybody else to be heard from the floor?
That's
No,
it. That's all the speaker
Okay.
request forms.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to thank Mr. Heinisch for his comments. I agree in principle with exactly what he said. I think that's what we're striving toward. I think that characterizes what we're trying to do here pretty fairly. There's more to it. Will only had 3 minutes. I've got maybe 4 or 5, maybe. I'm not going to abuse that privilege. I'm not going to go back over where we were at the last meeting 2 weeks ago, but the draft before you tonight has been tweaked a little bit. We are using different color coding. We had some yellow coding before, and then we've got a little bit of blue. If you can read that in your background tonight, you can see we are moving in a direction of going, I think, a little further than normal to try to identify what an affirmative defense is. And there, I received some things that just today, some information today that was by way of recommendations that I don't, at first glance, have an objection to. Again, when you're anxious about how things are going to be enforced, you want to have a little more meat in the law rather than some general words that are too open to interpretation. I get it. And when we bring something back, that's why this is up for a first reading tonight. We bring back something on a second reading. I think you'll see a lot of that incorporated. What I want to talk about just briefly tonight is what this does not do. We've heard a lot about what people think it does, and I think Mr. Heinisch is pretty much on target. We've heard some other things tonight and in the last week which are unnerving and unsettling to me because they are just a sheer misrepresentation of the facts. I love it that people can come here and talk and throw it all out there. This is what I believe. And then eventually we all sort through, in the public and in this room, what the facts are, and you press me pretty hard on that. So I'm going to give you some facts tonight. There are some misconceptions I want to address head on because it's just black and white in the ordinance that you have in your background that is different. I wonder how many people who have been keeping to these misconceptions have actually read the whole ordinance or read it maybe twice. But here's one misconception, that the crime-free housing ordinance that's before you violates the Fair Housing Act and Illinois Human Rights Act. You heard that again tonight. Let me tell you what the Human Rights Act says. Quote, the law, okay, the state law. The prohibition against the use of an arrest record under section blah, 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 shall not preclude an owner or any other person engaging in a real estate transaction from prohibiting the tenant, a member of the tenant's household, or a guest of the tenant from engaging in unlawful activity on the premises. Now, we have a crime-free lease addendum, which makes it very clear that not only are tenants responsible individually for their actions, and if they're above board, there's nothing to worry about, but they're also responsible according to our crime-free lease, which is similar. It was built 10 years ago, by the way, out of models that were used all around the state. It holds a tenant vicariously responsible for actions that occurred on the premises, whether he or she committed those unlawful actions or not. That's been in the law here for 11 years and has not ever been contested or tested. So the two together, I think, blow away that misconception. Three more, excuse me. It's been alleged that the ordinance violates state law by not exempting victims of domestic and sexual violence. This is offensive to me. It's obviously incorrect. There are 3 places where in the ordinance that you have in your background, it explicitly denies that. I will read them. They're just 3 sentences. A tenant shall not be retaliated against nor evicted when merely a victim of unlawful activity. How many more words do you have to say then? But we didn't leave it there. We said it in 2 other ways in the course of what you have in your background tonight, in which the whole community has been able to see. With respect to criminal nuisance property violations, I quote, "This section is not intended and must not be interpreted to cover police calls related to domestic violence, sexual violence, crime victims, child abuse, or calls from a disabled individual, or calls on behalf of an individual in need of police services. Finally, this isn't what we're proposing. 2 sentences here. The title is Retaliation Prohibited. No landlord, owner, or any other person in control of the rental property shall retaliate against any person who complains, reports, or testifies about the alleged occurrence of unlawful activity on the rental property, nor shall any rental agreement prohibit any such complaint, on and on and on. You get the point. So some people want to say up when you say down. This is a good example of that. The ordinance, according to some, requires landlords to evict tenants based on an arrest record. Absolutely not. As part of this program that's being proposed, which we'll discuss tonight and in 2 weeks, landlords are able to prevent a penalty if they show steps are being taken to provide, it says that the landlord shall have a security plan. Now, that plan may give notice to tenants that their activities are under scrutiny as tenants in the space that they're renting, and according to the crime-free lease, they could be held accountable for those. Finally, the ordinance requires landlords to evict tenants based on an arrest record. Again, incorrect. So as part of the program, landlords can prevent a penalty if they show steps are being taken to provide crime-free housing. It's not a requirement that any of these steps include eviction. It is not stated as such in the code that's before you. It was never contemplated as such. It is one possible consequence based on a crime-free lease, which has been in place for 11 years. So that's what's before you tonight. It has changed just slightly, and the blue-colored shading is what has changed. And happy to answer any questions you may have. Our city attorney has been working on this with other parties. I've been working on it with local landlords and others who are interested, and I think we're getting close to a consensus, but there's a little more work to do.
Council. Alderman Verbeek.
Well, I don't like that we're in this spot. I don't like that we are having this conversation and trying to find any way possible to keep our residents and our community safe. So certainly questions from Ward 6 come about like, well, we're talking about crime. Do we have a crime problem? Is that what we're talking about? So I tried to get some measures, and Chief, correct me if any of this is inaccurate. So I went to FBI crime data, and DeKalb has 88 crimes per square mile. Rockford has 100 crimes per square mile. Aurora has, for example, 49 crimes per square mile, and Rock Island at 53. So if you look at that data, you would say, yes, we're at the higher level of what we're experiencing here. But this reactionary stance, I just wish that we as a community could be more proactive on things. Now, city council curing societal woes, no, that's not possible. But with this ordinance proposal, what I felt I needed to do was talk with property owners that have properties in DeKalb and also have properties in other cities. What is that difference? What is the one versus the other? Not to take too much time, but one comment was, well, this other property I have in another county, to address some of these issues that you're talking about in DeKalb, it takes 2 or 3, I think he said 2 to 4 days to evict the tenant that has had ongoing issues of crime or property damage or whatever the case may be. And in DeKalb, it's 6 to 9 weeks. So what do we do in this instance where the property owner, landlord, or whatnot is trying to work through this situation, yet can't get the case heard, can't get the tenant situation resolved one way or the other? Will there be I guess, a time that the property owner will get to see that through with this particular, perhaps a tenant causing crime that they are trying to evict? So I would like to see us have some type of consideration for that. Additionally, the other differences pointed out by property owners, again, a few of them, even in Ward 6, that they noticed among DeKalb and other cities, like Aurora, the last owner I talked to has properties in both places, is that they are experiencing challenges with youth behavior, crime, property damage in DeKalb properties, not in Aurora. One thing that they've noticed is that the school district in Aurora verifies residency with the property owner in Aurora, whereas DeKalb School District does not. So that property owner commented that if there was a better partnership with the community, then they didn't understand that the city was separate from the school district at the time, that there could be more success in taking proactive measures. And, you know, my response to that for both was, well, certainly as a property owner, if you have those concerns, you can go to the school district and work with them, because I don't see how we would compel anything related one way or the other in that stance. So I'm all ears on other ideas of how we are more proactive as a community. The situation that people are in is just, it's sad in some cases, and to no fault of their own. And what can we do to help lift up people, put things in a better situation? And I'm not sure how much more we can do as a city, but what I want to see us be is proactive and not have to do this. But I do understand why, and Will, a nice job following up why we need to do this. Hopefully not for too long. Thank you.
Alderwoman Larson.
I guess I beg to differ, that I see this as being more proactive or getting us to the proactive, that we're at a point, and if we stay the course we are, we're asking police and everything to constantly be reactive because these people have places to stay, landlords who allow them to live. By giving the landlords more incentives to be a better landlord, because I agree with Mr. Heinisch that this is not, it's for a small number of landlords, that it will make us more proactive, that we are getting, this sounds terrible, the people who want a safe place to live. That's what we want to supply for any economic level you're coming from. And, you know, we have to come up with something. And I think by doing this, by causing landlords to be a little more careful about who they rent to and why they're renting to them and who's in their facilities, that is being more proactive. And I think landlords who have been following the crime-free, they're going to look at, their properties have just gone up in value then. Because if all of DeKalb is like, that is a great place to live, they've really got their act together, all of the rental properties are just that much more attractive to everybody. So I think this is a proactive way to go.
Alderwoman Larson, or Morris, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the exact same thing as Alderman Verbeek was speaking, just that I perceive this to be proactive as well in the context of forcing landlords to make more deliberate decisions up front. So, yeah, I agree.
Alderman McAdams.
So to kind of piggyback on what they've been saying, we are talking about a small number of landlords that are causing the problems. And I think we all agree that maintaining the status quo is not the answer. So I think we have to do something. And that's something that I hear as an alderman almost every week. Someone says, can we do something about crime? So here we are, we're trying to do something about crime. I want to talk about, I know we have a lot of landlords in town that do a great job. I want to talk about one that doesn't. I'm in the process of looking for a new apartment in the 5th Ward, and every time somebody puts out a sign that says for rent, I call the number. And one day I get a phone call from a landlord who says, you called me? And I, oh yeah, there's a property on this address. And they said, okay, it's $2,000 for 3 bedrooms in the upstairs. They didn't ask if I could afford it. They didn't ask if I had a criminal background. And they didn't ask what I was going to do with the 3 rooms. They just wanted the $2,000. And it made me personally pause and think, wow, this is in my ward. This is a potential for criminal activity. So the landlords that are following the rules should want us to go after the landlords like this that aren't following the rules. So I think that all of this conversation has been wonderful for giving us a good basis of what to do. I think we definitely need to make more exceptions for landlords that make efforts to communicate with our city. But I think what we're going after is the landlord that doesn't. The landlord that is happy to have me dealing drugs out of their upstairs, that is happy to have me doing whatever, as long as they get their $2,000 a month, which I would have to make $6,000 a month in order to afford. And we know that that's not particularly common among people who work, but we definitely know it's common among people who are criminals. And so that, to me, it sounded like an opportunity for crime. And I thought, if this guy had any idea that there was an alderman on the phone, he wouldn't have said it. But he did. And so, in my mind, I'm going to do something about that landlord, and I'm going to hope not to harm the good landlords in order to get at that guy. So I'm going to support this unless I hear something dramatic or something radical that changes my mind, because I know there's at least one place in my ward where open criminal activity is being encouraged for financial gain.
Alderman Favor.
I just really appreciate the collaboration between the community with Dara and the work of city staff and our city attorney to put this together. And as I think we've mentioned, there's still a little more work to do. And certainly, you know, I think it's wonderful that the community is working collaboratively to come forth with a solution. So I'm in support of this. I'd like, you know, obviously we're going to only approve it on first reading tonight. We're not going to approve the second reading, so that we continue to work on it. But we're moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Alderman Burbick. And thanks, City Manager, for response. Again, suggestions, rental licensing was one of them. One of these property owners, again, owning property in Aurora, they started rental licensing in 1982. And again, that was in response to some of the same challenges that we're experiencing here. Now, the city manager, at the end of the day, I agree that that whole process of rental licensing is beyond our capacity right now from a staffing standpoint. But how could, again, I'm looking more to be proactive. I think we have different ideas of being proactive, but across council. But what can we do from a standpoint of partnering with owners? Maybe some get over their heads on upkeep. That upkeep, that lack of upkeep, will generally be, I guess, a negative to the community. And I know that money doesn't grow on trees, but what can we do to help property owners, I guess, weather the storm, whatever that storm may be?
Alderwoman Morris.
Yeah, I just wanted to note in reference to Alderman Verbeek's previous comments regarding basically eviction teeth. I think, you know, you were talking about the amount of time that it took in Aurora versus here. And
Yeah.
I think that's really important. I think as we're working on this ordinance and crafting it so that it has the outcome that we're hoping for in the end. And I know just saying that sounds really heartless, and I understand that we are dealing with, as a council, I know that we are eager to protect women and children and families and people who are law-abiding citizens, all of them. We are eager to protect them, and we are eager to see them safely living in our community, and we don't want to see people considered, you know, guilty before they've had due process of law and that sort of thing. But I have been sitting on this council for, 4 years now, waiting for a change, trying to make a change, working as best we can to make a change in the community, while our housing situation is destroying our community. So, whereas 4 years ago, an ordinance like this, I may have felt very differently about. Today, as I hear it, it is a collaborative effort to fix a problem that we haven't been able to fix yet. And so I applaud the efforts of everyone involved.
I was going to say just three points, if I may. One is the landlord that is already doing all those things that would be reasonably necessary to prevent unlawful activities, such as initiating an enforcement action of the crime-free housing ordinance, will be entitled to an absolute affirmative defense, which would be a bar against any fines. And the landlord that does that after they've been found, that they didn't do anything beforehand to prevent criminal activity, but then says, you know what, I'm going to get my act together and do what's necessary. The ordinance provides, as drafted, that anything that they do to abate that criminal activity afterwards, we would stay or pause any type of fines that would be had. And we understand that that the eviction process takes a while. If that is the route that they are going to go to prevent unlawful activity, and we don't want to penalize anybody for going through that. And that brings to the third point. There's been talk about due process and whatnot. This hearing process itself provides for that very due process. There's notice of the violation and charges, and there's an opportunity to be heard before a neutral administrative hearing officer. The eviction process itself, which is totally separate from this, would provide for due process for any type of a tenant as well. So I think that those concerns have been baked into it. If they need to be addressed further and enhanced, then that's the point of the meeting and the public dialogue, and the city, I think, would be very happy to address that.
Any other comments or questions, Council? I also want to thank Dara's leadership for the conversations that have been going on for months now. I think the city's been incredibly transparent as well as receptive to the feedback that we've been getting. And that's another reason why we're just going to pass this on first reading. That'll give us another couple of weeks to review some of the changes that Dara has suggested, what City Manager Nicholas has come up with, in the hopes of crafting a document that we all can at least be comfortable enough with to be able to move forward at our next council meeting. Hearing no other questions or comments, roll call, please.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-9.
Ordinance 2022-051 passes on first reading. All right, moving on to Ordinance 2022-052, approving a final plat of subdivision for Park 88, Unit 5, along Maycomb Drive, Park 88 Group LLC. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
Second.
Moved by Alderman Favors, seconded by Alderman Verbic. Yeah, if you were here for that agenda item, feel free to leave, and we won't take offense to that in any way, shape, or form. All right, City Manager.
Thank you. I want to begin by introducing Mark Good, who's been sitting here all night on a variety of topics affecting our community, and a little bit of an unsolicited commercial here. Mr. Good and his associates have done a lot for this community. So Park 88, as you know, has been doing well, and here's another opportunity for us to partner with Mr. Good and his associates. There is an interest. The use that is proposed will become known shortly, but it is one of the acceptable uses within our UDO, our Unified Development Ordinance. So what's before you tonight is just simply allowing for a subdivision of one lot. It's about 15.6 acres. It's on the south side of Maycom Drive, across from the Target Distribution Center. It's a good spot for this particular business, and this matter was brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission on October 3rd, and the commission unanimously recommended your approval. We support that recommendation.
Council. Questions, comments? Hearing none. Sorry, Alderman
It's
Favor?
great to see another development in DeKalb. Thank you very much.
Any others? All right, roll call, please.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
7-0.
Ordinance 2022-052 passes on first reading. I would accept a motion to waive second reading.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderwoman Morris, seconded by Alderman Favor. Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
7-0.
Ordinance 2022-052, second reading has been waived. Absolutely thank you for your contributions to our community. Anything comes up, you know you can reach out to city staff. We'll do everything we can to make it as smooth of a process for you. So thank you again. How about a round of applause for Good stuff. All right, moving on to ordinance 2022-053, amending Chapter 51, Traffic, Schedule C, Parking Prohibited as it pertains to changing the tow zone time from 2 a.m. to 12 a.m. Motion to bring it to the floor.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderman McAdams, seconded by Alderwoman Larson. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This particular ordinance has been recommended by Chief Byrd and Police Department. As you know, we've had some serious incidents of crime and also some roving parties that have been happening earlier and earlier in the
Some
evening.
roving parties?
On a regular basis.
Yes.
And oftentimes they take over parts or all of a particular street, even though there may be adequate off-street parking just for visit friends and so forth. These are, 100 or 200 cars and many more individuals involved. And one tool, one very effective tool, doesn't involve arrests. Sometimes it just involves the sight of the bubbles on the top of a tow truck arriving, has been to use the tow trucks to remove cars who are already illegally parked in the street, on safe streets and so forth. And even before they can be hooked, people are heading out, leaving. If we wait till 2 in the morning, oftentimes the street is taken. And this is a practical matter. What we'd like to do is move that. We're already we're talking about safe streets which already have restrictions on parking in the street itself. So we're talking about moving up that first opportunity for towing, police tows now we're talking about, in the public way to midnight instead of 2. And that will tend to be more effective as a crime deterrent and also free up our police to do other things as bars close.
Council, questions, comments? Oh, Alderman Favor, sorry.
I'm just curious, so I saw this is in relation to some resident only. Are the signs going to then get updated in the area, or how are people going to get notified?
Yeah, I
of
mean, we
that?
can't even enforce it until the signs are changed and changing. There's a lot of signs, but that's our ambition here. And we feel that effort is a valuable effort in terms of the desired result.
Any other comments, questions? For me, I was on a ride-along Saturday night, and multiple pop-up parties, police rolling through, no movement whatsoever. And City Manager Nicholas is absolutely right. We ticketed, we called in the tow trucks. That was pretty much problem solved at that point. So giving our police the ability to enforce that 2 hours earlier will definitely free up some needed resources for other issues that are going on in the community, rather than dealing with 200-300 people at a party, basically trashing and causing a lot of property damage. And the fact that you get so many people together, that's a concern, because, you know, obviously tempers can flare, there's been drinking going on, and we never know where that could lead. So I'm particularly excited about moving this to midnight and allowing our officers to be able to, as I said, free up their resources to address the other needs in our community. Any other questions or comments? All right, roll call, please.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
Ordinance 2022-053 passes on first reading. I would take a motion to waive second reading.
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Perkins, seconded by Alderman Favor. Questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
Second reading has been waived for ordinance 2022-053. Andy, get printing.
And thank you, sir, and city council, and I want to thank the city manager. This is very important for the police department. I know it doesn't seem like much, but as you said, you were able to see that Saturday. The earlier we can start making impactful decisions and dealing with these pop-up parties, a lot of time the 200, 300 people at these parties, and a lot of times we only have 8 to 10 officers, so you can imagine what the ratio is, and that's very problematic for us. So this gives us opportunity to get started a little earlier and try to circumvent a lot of the issues that we do have later on in the night. So thank you for this. Appreciate it.
Chief. All right, moving on to number 4, ordinance 2022-054, amending Chapter 51 Traffic, Schedule C, parking prohibited as it pertains to establishing resident-only parking on Locust Street. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderman Verbic, seconded by Alderman Favor. City Manager.
We talked about this earlier. This is that concern that has been an abiding concern for residents on that stretch of Locust Street, and we recommend your approval.
Questions or comments, council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
Ordinance 2022-054 passes on first reading. I would take a motion to waive second reading.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderman Perkins, seconded by Alderman Favor. Roll call, please.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
Second reading has been waived for ordinance 2022-054. All right, moving on to agenda item N, reports and communications, council reports. Alderwoman Morris, you want to kick us off?
Sure. No report.
Okay. McAdams?
No report.
Sorry, Favor?
Yeah, so we had the proclamation earlier about the white cane and safety, and just, I've observed a couple times people turning right on red. Now that it's getting darker earlier, you know, you're driving at a time when it's not normally, you haven't been used to being dark, and just be more vigilant for runners, bicyclists, pedestrians. I saw a near miss is what we would call it, where a car was turning right on red, didn't see the runner in the intersection and literally pulled right out in front of him. So just be aware of your surroundings, watch out for pedestrians and cyclists.
And thanks for saying that. I've ended up on the hood of a car before, yet I still find myself, when I'm looking left, there's an opening, wanting to go, and pausing and looking right is, yeah, absolutely critical. Alderman Verbic.
For Knowles residents, the week of October 17th, the resurfacing in force will commence, with completion set by the end of October.
Alderman Perkins.
No report.
Alderwoman Larson.
Kind of piggybacking on Alderman Favor, watch for farm vehicles. I know we don't have a lot in town, but there's some along Peace Road, there's some along Bethany that are trying to get from different fields. And you think, you know, they're so big, you can obviously see them, but their blind spots are a lot bigger than you think. So, you know, just give them a wide berth.
For myself, I was at a dedication for a historical marker for Dr. Chase. He was one of the lead researchers at DeKalb Genetics, who really helped usher in a whole new wave of accelerating research on hybrid corn. And it was incredible, just his life story and what he has done and the impact he's made. His family was out, and it was just really cool to hear someone that I think he was 101 or 102 when he passed away, and just to hear stories of family and fellow researchers talk about the man. But the impact, obviously, DeKalb Genetics made on our community was just substantial. So it was just really cool. I would wish I could share some of the scientific jargon, but it was absolutely lost on me. Also attended the Elks Veteran Memorial dedication. If you haven't seen it, the Elks Club has just an incredible memorial out there. Yeah, with all flags of all the branches, including Space Force, which was really cool. I believe there's a POW flag as well, and then of course the American flag. But the dedication ceremony was just moving. There was a lot of people that showed up. It was done incredibly respectfully. I think Michael Embry, who's a champion for veterans in our community, did a great job with that. But I definitely want to personally thank again the Elks for allowing that memorial on the property and doing such a great job for the creation of it. So that was phenomenal.
Thank you. It's very cool to see coming into
Yeah.
New England Road.
And once the lights get on it too, oh my gosh, with that tree in the background, yeah, that's going to cause a lot of people to stop and take a look at it.
And kudos to Michael. Michael he's got a real creative flair, and he really took the bull by the horns and got things done.
Yeah, agreed.
Great stuff.
Also attended the homecoming parade. This has been a while since we've had a homecoming parade, and that was downtown. We're going to double down on it next year, but my gosh, the amount of athletes that showed up, and NIU staff that showed up, as well as community that showed up for, they call it a walk because it was about 2.5 blocks long. I'd love to see it be 8 blocks long, and we shut down 38. Close your ears, Andy, sorry. But I'd love to see it expand, and I know NIU does as well. They're committed to really figuring out how to further engage the community with the university. Students were out painting the downtown, the windows red, and with different Husky signs, and it was just a real cool communiversity event. And I got to thank the Egyptian Theater for stepping up and allowing a bunch of events afterward to happen within the theater itself. So that was really cool. Then went out to tailgating this weekend, which was a lot of fun. Was on WLBK with Sean Lowe was one of the DJs. Just a great conversation, but the energy again was phenomenal. And the student presence, oh my gosh, where they were tailgating, I bet there was 500, 600, 700. Chief, you were out there if I remember right. I mean, it was just jam-packed with alums, with students, everyone interacting, everyone having a lot of fun. Wish we could have brought home the win, but it was still a really good game. And then the last thing, I was on a police ride-along Saturday night from 7 p.m. to 3:30 a.m. I think I'm still recovering from it. But it was about 9 hours. I got to kick off at roll call. We had agencies from the Illinois State Police, DeKalb County Sheriff's Office, NIU. Our force was out in force. I can't even imagine how many of our officers were out that night. The ISP had multiple shifts. They were taking care of Annie Glidden and 88 when people were getting off the off-ramp. They were doing stops there. And then every other entity was out there on the streets. Really, it was really cool to see patrol. We talk about speeding and stuff all the time. I bet if you could look down Annie Glidden at any time, you'd see 3 people pulled over. I was on multiple calls, and I'm really glad we were pulling some of these people over. Multiple arrests were made, cars were towed and impounded. So it was good that we were out there, but that presence, to see all the law enforcement agencies cooperating together and that impact they made, that was an incredibly safe homecoming. And previous homecomings, we've had some significant events happen. This one, a lot of people driving without their lights on, some DUIs. I mean, there was multiple things, of course, but overall, I couldn't have felt better about how safe our community was for such a big event. And Chief, just kudos to your department, everything that you all did. I hope you pass that down to all of them. I'd like to say on behalf of council, for keeping our streets safe during such a significant event in our community, and also just helping keep our students safe.
Yeah, and I will just say thank you, and thank you. Letters went out to all those agencies this morning. There are approximately, we have 30 officers probably every night. That's a lot of officers. Saturated a town of this size. So you talk about saturation, it's a deterrent. as you can tell, we went the whole weekend, like you said, without any major incidents. So, so kudos, like you said, to everybody involved. So it, you know, it's the old saying, it takes a village. That's what happens now in law enforcement. When there used to be a time when agencies were very territorial and they wouldn't ask for help and they wouldn't, believe me, I've dealt with it with ISP and CPD. But that time has gone and it's in the past, and this is how we need to police for these big functions. So thank you for doing the ride along, so I appreciate it.
You betcha. All right, that's all I have. With that, we can move on to, city manager report, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I've got a report on the DIMCO status. So
That's right.
at your places there, I thought the pictures would be worth 1,000 words, so I've got 3 or 4, and I'll just walk through real quickly. So in the time, in the last 2 weeks since we talked about this with the owner standing before you, that first week ended and they were making a significant effort to crush vehicles, and he suggested that there were some 400, well over 100 were done in that first week. As you look at pages 2 and 3, you can see, kind of open up the little packet here, you can see they've not been removed, these little steamer trunks that were once a car or vehicle. They're stacked up, ready to be loaded. If you look at page 4, you'll see what's left to be crushed. That's it's hard to tell how many vehicles are back in there. Maybe there's 50, maybe there's 60, but a good portion of it has been done. There still is a very large pile, if you look at page 6, of the rebar that had been salvaged and collecting there for a long time. Now, that's not part of what's allowed in the special use, so that has to be, it could be parked over on the other side of 10th Street in the salvage yard, or it could be moved out for the value of it. But something has to be done, that's another piece of it, but clearly while he was crushing cars, he wasn't removing that. So there was some contact at the end of last week with the owner, and he said he intends to continue with the cars until they're done and out of there. My recommendation is that, okay, we've seen some progress, that's what you asked for. I think we bring it back as an item at the next general, we're going to have a healthy agenda, but we'll bring that back and have a report on where we stand. As part of that, we bring back the second reading on that revocation. If you're agreeable, however you want to move on it, or do you want to give more time than that? I think the car part, we'll see some action. We're not going to see all those rebar piles gone and all the rest of that, but maybe having him come back here before you at that point might inspire him to keep going. Your call.
Are you feeling like he's not going to meet the deadline?
I could have put this back on, but I thought now we're just going to, in a parliamentary way, we're just going to keep spinning this for a while. So I wanted to give you a report, which was promising. But it could take another month just to tackle the rebar piles and the car relocation, the crushed car relocation. Because we'll have them all easily done by probably the end of the week. You should have the cars crushed. Your call.
What was that?
I said I'd say give him some grace.
Yeah, we did. 90 days worth. He assured us he'd have it done in 30 or 60. Blew the 90-day deadline. We gave him 60. Or giving him 60, I should say. Gave him 60. Thoughts?
Everything takes longer right now.
Yeah.
May as well just say it publicly. I think it's pretty well known to you. We're hoping that he keeps working on this because the enforcement of it is not like a slam dunk thing. How do you abate this? We don't have a crusher. Andy, you haven't asked for a crusher. So it would cost the city money to abate it, and then what do we get? So we're doing a little bit of a minuet here. He's giving us something over the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
Which we hadn't seen.
Okay, Alderman Perkins?
So to clarify, we are beyond the deadline, right?
Yeah, we hit the deadline at the last meeting.
So we're 2 weeks beyond the deadline.
Yep. And the council gave him till the next meeting.
We
So
gave
I-
another
so-
deadline, yeah.
So I don't have an issue if he has to, maybe he should come give us an update.
Okay.
And I agree.
Happy to do that.
I think that's very fair, not, you know, and it's not saying we're satisfied, we're unsatisfied, but I think it does keep a little pressure to say, well, you gotta keep moving the needle.
Yeah. Okay. How about that, city manager?
How do you want to just structure this? I could bring back that second reading and you decide to, at least you could act that night, or you could table it again for another, if that's agreeable to you, that's probably the way to do it.
Yeah, we could talk about it further.
Yeah.
Maybe at our next meeting. What's the
Okay.
best strategy there? Rather than we all sit here deciding
Yeah,
how we want to
yeah,
bring it back.
yeah.
That's all right.
Right.
You guys good? Okay, all right. All right, so you and I will address that, city manager.
Can I just?
Yes.
Okay, so does this include just crushing the cars, or he has to get them off the premise?
He's supposed to remove it, remove all the evidence of the cars. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, moving on to agenda item O, executive session. I'd ask for a motion to approve to hold an executive session in order to discuss the purchase or lease of real property as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C5. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Morris, seconded by Alderman Favor. Roll call, please.
Larson,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
Our regular meeting is now in recess.